Conservative values under President Trump. Here's what he said during a speech to the National Faith and Freedom Coalition Conference for Voters of Faith in Washington on Friday.
In my view, the last 16 months have been the single best period for conservative values since I came to Washington, as indicated back in 1985. And this is not hyperbole. This is not spin. This is not hyperbole. This is a fact.
All right, so there's a fact. Bob Costa, let's go through the litany. You've got the biggest spending bill in the history of America, massive increases in the deficit, the most reckless spending spree in American history, I think, this past year. He talked about conservative values at a faith meeting, paying off a porn star, getting busted with a Playboy bunny. You could talk about all the racism after post-Charlottesville, defending white supremacists, trying to ban 1.5 billion people from coming into this country based on their faith, based on his campaign promise. I mean,
Did you get the payoff to the porn star?
Yeah, I did. The litany goes on and on and on. And now a left-wing trade war and the disemboweling of the United States' closest allies, the alliances that have held this country together and made us the strongest country on the planet for 50 years. Explain to me, on what planet has Donald Trump's presidency been the high-water mark for conservatism?
Well, many traditional conservatives have walked away from the Republican Party. George Will, for one. And you see a lot of people naming that same list in Joe Scarborough, walking away from the party. I didn't want to bring you up without...
No, thank you. Mika pointed at me, yes.
But what's interesting is that when you talk to your former colleagues and you talk to traditional conservatives, they cite the tax bill and the courts as the reason they're supporting President Trump. But they do not want to really talk about the Muslim ban. They don't want to talk about the trade war. And so they're really, with McConnell, the leader, separate the courts and the tax bill and some policies from the president's conduct and other aspects of the president's agenda.
And Casey, though, I guess what also is so maddening is that they are scared to death to say anything negative about Donald Trump publicly, but privately they all trash him. And Mitch McConnell, having the audacity to say that in front of this Faith and Freedom group, when Mitch McConnell doesn't believe that. Nobody on Capitol Hill thinks he believes that. Again, they're just the cowardice shown across the Hill from Republicans is really pretty staggering in the face of racism, in the face of, again, payoffs to porn stars, lying about payoffs to porn stars, Playboy bunnies, lying about payoffs to Playboy bunnies. I mean, the racism in Charlottesville, the retweeting of fascist videos out of Britain. I mean, literally, calling Hispanics breeders. By the way, to our friends at this faith workshop this weekend,
clapping.
What do you think about Mexicans being called, or Hispanics being called breeders, Mexicans being called racists? Yeah. The most un-Christ-like.
I was going to say, most of that stuff is not Christian.
The most un-Christ-like behavior in the White House, based on the attacks of other people. If you judge Jesus by his words and the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 25. I could go on and on. Anybody that's read the Bible and actually read words in their Bible, understand that it isn't even me criticizing Donald Trump or questioning his faith. They don't know what his faith is. I know he said that he doesn't need God's forgiveness, which undercuts the central premise of Christianity for 2,000 years. But Mitch McConnell says that Donald Trump this is the high water mark in conservatism. And Mitch McConnell is an honorable man. So tell us, what's going on?
I'm not sure blessed are the meek is a phrase that Donald Trump lives by either. So for Mitch McConnell, I mean, one thing that did strike me is that he said this is the most, the best period, not hyperbole for conservatism, since I got here in 1985. I just would like to point out that includes the second term of Ronald Reagan, the end of the Cold War, the eventual fall of the Berlin Wall. So I find that to be a pretty remarkable statement on those grounds. But secondly, I do think that Mitch McConnell's view of the world is that he will be here longer than President Trump will be here. And the work that he is doing right now is that, they are stacking the courts. Donald Trump has put more judges on the circuit courts in the first, fewer than 2 years, right? In the first 2 years of his term than the presidents that preceded him. And frankly, those actions are going to have consequences that will last and shape our country for much longer than even if Trump were in office.
Why not say that if that's what he meant?
You said, why did he say that?
Yeah.
Who's he speaking to there? He's speaking to the conservative voter. Republicans across the board are nervous about the voters who are at that conference coming out this fall. That was a stoke the turnout speech.
Well, what about those voters? Where in the Bible does it say, blessed are they that separate parents from their children at the border, right? I mean, where in the Bible does it say that? Where is that a Christian value? And so what is the responsibility of those conservatives of faith to talk back to Mitch McConnell and say, really? I mean, is this?
But Gene, the problem here is that Mitch McConnell would not be saying that to that group if that's not exactly what they wanted to hear, which raises a much more serious problem.
Well, it does. It does.
The evangelical community is the one who lifted Trump in the primaries.
I know.
And in the general.
It's really quite astounding. I mean, I just,
I can think of a few other words than astounding.
Yeah, well, I can too, but I can say that word on television, and so I won't use those other words. But I mean, really, these are people. I believed that a lot of these people, genuinely people of faith, might have disagreed on political issues, might have disagreed on a lot of other things, but I believe they believed what they said they believed.